For a podcast, I like to keep it light and fun, so here we go.
Yeah, you did that. It's a creative use of.
It's the best way I can figure out how to use it.
Nice little stick, yeah. Awesome. Who wants to fire away?
Anytime, Mark.
Okay, go ahead. So Jim, as many people know, you're the founder of Inside Out Sports. Our question is, how did you come to bring this together? And what were the challenges in making this all come across?
Sure. Well, putting on a Champions Tour is not a new idea. This has been around for quite a long time, actually. Players like Rod Laver actually played on Champions Tours after their time on tour. But there is a void in the marketplace in 2005 when we started this concept. In North America, we didn't have one. And so, along with John Dennis and my partner at Inside Out, we saw an opportunity with players like John McEnroe, still very active, and now 13 years later, still active and playing great tennis. Players in my age group going to want a place to play, just because historically speaking, players like to play. We like to compete. It's fun. It's not, even players that have more money than they can spend the rest of their lives still like to come out and compete. It's kind of part and parcel of who we are. So this tour is a nice I think outlet for people like myself to be able to come out and compete, but also not be away from home to the extent that we used to be when we were full-time on the circuit. So the one-night event format really works for us, so we can kind of get in and get out. We put on a really good show for the fans and satisfy our creative, competitive Jones, rather.
I understand Daniel Nestor is an alternate tonight. We think he's going to retire at the end of this season. Is there any sense that maybe you could get him involved?
Old Lazarus, he'll never retire. He's never going to stop, is he? The lefty, come on. Daniel's he's been so good for so long, and it's just amazing that he's been able to play at this level. And I'm sure he'll miss the sport, but he'll have opportunities to play in events like this if he wants to stay involved in tennis, and I'm sure he will. But he's had an incredible run. You have to tip the cap to him.
From 45-year-old Daniel to 19, Denis Shapovalov. What has impressed you about what Denis has done? Obviously, he's creating a lot of excitement, not just in Canada.
No, he really captivated the fans at Arthur Ashe Stadium last year at the U.S. Open. He got a huge amount of support when he was playing there. He's just an electrifying player to watch. The leftiness is very attractive. Aesthetically, his game is very pleasing. It's very flowing. There's a lot of flexibility there and flashiness. He's got a look. He's got a swagger. He likes the spotlight. He seems to be fearless, and he likes to work from everything I hear and see about him. And with Martin Larendow, he's got really good guidance, veteran, capable leadership there. So it's no mistake and no mystery that he's catapulted himself into the conversation this quickly. He's got a lot to work with, and he's working hard with it.
In the 90s, you had that big four of yourself, Chang, Agassi, Sampras. What do you remember about that time? And was there a lot of pride as to being the flag bearer for America?
I mean, I remember that I was always the best looking of the group. Not the best player. But no, we were a group that came through the juniors roughly at the same time. I don't think any of us really had any inkling that we were going to be able to win the amount of titles that we did. I mean, if you'd have told us that we were going to win as much as either Andre or Pete did by themselves, I think we would have had a hard time believing that. So it was a great group to be a part of. I still cherish my matches that I got to play with those guys. Still get to see them and play with them occasionally out here on this circuit, and just be friends with them. I have a lot in common with them. We've been in the trenches together, in the locker rooms together, on Davis Cup teams and Olympic teams together. So there's a lot of common ground there, and it was a special time in our lives. There's no doubt about it. It was a pretty special group, and there's so many other players that were significant players in that era too. Players like Todd Martin, Mal Washington, who made major finals, David Wheaton, a Wimbledon semifinalist and top 10 player. Multiple players in my junior age group who were #1 in the world in doubles, guys like Jared Palmer and Alex O'Brien that people probably don't think much about. But it was a very, very deep group of players who impacted the sport at that time.
This is tough to kind of put away some of those friendships and personal relationships aside. Like I know yourself and Andre were at the Palteri Academy together. Is that tough to kind of put aside when you're at the other end of the match?
We were, I mean, it was pretty cutthroat there for a while. We're much friendlier now, I think, than necessarily when we first came on the tour, because we're all trying to grab the same thing. So it's definitely, it can be a highly intense environment. I think our friendships fluctuated throughout our time on tour. We'd get close during Davis Cup weeks, but then we'd be back at each other's throats trying to win big titles the next week. So we were big boys about it. It never spilled over too badly, but I think we've come out better on the other end of it with hindsight, with maturity, and with the lack of intense competition where we're fighting for our lives like we used to.
Jim, in Canada, I've talked to you about Dennis, but Felix Auger-Aliassime also getting a lot of buzz. What has been your impressions of what you've heard about him?
Yeah.
And I don't know how much you've seen of him.
So I'm highly stressed out trying to get the proper pronunciation for both Dennis and Felix for my television work. So maybe you can share with me, how do you pronounce his last name?
Felix Auger-Aliassime.
Aliassime. Okay, I got the Felix and the Auger, no problem.
Okay.
It was the Aliassime that was stressing me. So I feel better now. Thank you for that.
It took me some time.
Yeah.
I did some research.
Yeah, good. You just were my researcher, so I
There you
appreciate
go.
that.
No problem.
Felix, I've not seen play live much. I've seen a lot of him on online and on video. He is very impressive athletically. I think he's 6'3" from what I've seen. I mean, he's got size already. His technique looks really good. Again, a guy, I've watched him play some tour matches and some challenger matches, and it looks like he enjoys playing the big moments. Just sort of has that it factor that Dennis also seems to share. The future's very bright for Canada, or as I like to call it, part of North America. But in all seriousness, no, you have a very bright future. Not to mention that Milo, should he get healthy, can threaten to win majors and might win majors going forward.
What do you make of where Milos is right now? Obviously working a bit with Goran. And
Yeah.
The health is always the issue, but
Yeah.
what's his place kind of in the game right now?
Well, I mean, Milos' health is foremost for him. When he's healthy, he's a threat to win basically everywhere with his serve. I mean, he can play, I think, on all surfaces well. And we've seen what he's done on grass and know that. But I think on hard courts and even on a quick clay court, he's a dangerous player to play against because he can take the racket out of anybody's hands with his power. I hope that he settles in on a coaching team and kind of get some stability there. I know he's bounced around a lot between a lot of really good tennis minds, and I think that can cause a little bit of instability for a player when they don't have a common voice. I mean, he's extremely bright, extremely thoughtful, extremely nice guy. I've enjoyed spending time with him at some appearances. We both represent New Balance, so I've gotten to spend some time with him away from sort of the stress points. And he's a very thoughtful guy, so not to mention a terrific athlete. It's about getting healthy. From there, a lot of great things can happen for him, and I think if he's healthy and things stabilize and he can get kind of a normal run on the tour, hopefully he can get some momentum back and get that off-court stability as well with a team that he can then build on.
Having spent some time with him, is there anything that you've learned that kind of stands out? Because you mentioned he's a thoughtful guy, maybe a quiet guy for some people, but he has so many different kind of outlets off the ice. He likes the art scene and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Has anything stand out in a conversation maybe you had and you're like, geez, this guy...
Well, I mean, the first time that I spent a little bit of time around him, I did what you're doing with me. I was basically running an interview for some sponsors to get to know him. And his intellect was impressive. Not often do you have athletes in tennis, at least, that have the vocabulary that he has. So the way that he's able to explain things in much more detail with better words than most tennis players can use, I think it speaks to his capacities, his interest in the arts, and his ability to find those other outlets and try and become a better person all around, as well as as good a tennis player as he can be. Speaks to I think the type of person he is, and I think he's a very good role model for anyone really, because he pursues his craft in a thoroughly professional manner, but he's not closed off to the rest of the world too. He's also open-minded and interested in what his opportunities to see the world get him. So he's not just sitting in his hotel room playing video games, which is such a shame that a lot of athletes generally do that instead of going out and walking around in a new city. There's a lot to learn out there.
So this is a bit of a tough one, so feel free to take an extra moment to think the answer here. But we have three other great competitors here with John and James and Mark. Supreme Court Podcast wants to know, who would you most want to go for a beer with, party with, live with, and who would you take most pleasure from destroying on the court tonight?
Okay. Okay, so the player that I would probably want to live with would be Philip Poussis, because he's a surfer. So he'd be out of the house early in the morning and be gone, and he's fairly neat. So I wouldn't have to see a lot of him, when I like my quiet time. So I think I'd probably go with Flip. Player that, it's pretty much a pick 'em as far as going out with a beer with any of these guys. I've had the privilege, and they're all good fun off the court, all fun to spend time with. You know, Flip may be the most adept in that environment as far as being social and bringing other interesting people to the table. Say that with a straight face. You know, look, James, you know, I mean, Johnny Mac and I just played so much on this Invesco series. I really love to beat his brains in, you know, and it doesn't happen all the time. So, I mean, I think I probably would take that. Now, what was the third one?
Party with, live with,
party with. Yeah.
destroy
So I
them.
guess I'm going out for beers with James. I guess
Nice.
you know, James knows his way around a beer stein. He'd probably be able to figure out a nice night for us. You know, I'm obviously the good-looking one, so I'll be bringing in all the interesting people in that one. But you know, I'll tough it out with James.
Hey Jim, knowing what you know now about your tennis and everything else, is there anything you'd prioritize differently as a junior, like some area of your game that you would have
Oh yeah,
maybe done things a little bit
oh
differently?
man, well, I mean, knowing what I know now, knowing that I have had a career in tennis and still get to play competitively, I would have never allowed myself to have the backhand grip I have. I would have changed that left hand on my backhand grip, but once I got stuck with it at the age of 12 or 13, it was hard for me to make that change. So I've done okay in spite of my technique, not because of it.
What's the hardest thing to go, like, for guys who are coming up, the junior guys, like Dennis is at 25 now, or Felix is cracking the top 10, to take the next step? Is it mental? Is it the physical maturation of their bodies?
I think it's all of
just
it.
everything?
Yeah, it's all of it. I mean, if you have a knack for it and you're willing to do the work, you can put those pieces of the puzzle together sooner than later. And I think we're seeing that. You know, Dennis is cracking in early, and that's good. And you know, mentally, the question mark will be how do players like Dennis, as they go up, even players like Sasha Zverev, how do they react when they get to their first Grand Slam final? And can they play with the same freedom that they've played in other events and other matches when you get there? And you only know when you get there, because that's walking into the unknown for every player who's ever been in that experience. So that will be the telltale sign. You know, does it take time, like it did for an Andy Murray, to figure out how to break through and play your best tennis on that stage? Or are you fearless, and are that teenager or the 20-year-old who just doesn't give a darn and just lets it fly, and like Sampras or Michael Chang, and you win as a teenager, one as a 20-year-old. You know, sometimes what you don't know doesn't hurt you. You know, that ignorance can be a little blissful for a young athlete.
Talked about that big four you guys had. Could you see something similar with the Canadians? I mean, Felix, Milos, Dennis, top 10.
I mean, I think that there is definitely something to be said about having a healthy rivalry, and almost like a brotherly rivalry, and amongst players from the same nation that can push each other and inspire each other and show each other the way forward. You know, I definitely felt that lift and the pull with my group, where one would get out in front and the others would do everything they could to catch up and get past, and then I would get caught, and Pete would get caught, and it was just a really nice scenario where we showed each other through different doors at different times, and sometimes pushed and sometimes pulled. That could certainly happen here.
Of the next gen ATP players, just wondering, do you see any of them potentially winning double-digit slams like Roger and Rafa?
It's certainly possible. It's certainly possible as we move to the post Big Four, Big Five era, which, you know, time is undefeated. So there will be an open window here very soon. I think in the next 2 to 3 years. You just don't know. Again, it's all about how do people handle that pressure. Do they have the all-court ability, the all-surface ability? Because if we're talking about winning, unless you're just such an amazing single-surface player like Nadal, not that he's not good on others, he is, but just his freakish nature of winning on clay. I don't necessarily see an outlier like that, but you know, I think winning double-digit majors is incredibly hard. You've maybe been a little blinded by these three guys doing it so easily here in this era, because it was a long time between the last guy winning double-digit majors and Sampras, and then all these guys just bum rushed it all at the same time.
Just to add to that, player longevity these days, like the average age of the top 10, or like Federer, Nadal, are continuously winning and winning and winning. Do you have any comments on that? Why you think that might be? Players used to retire at late 20s and then now in the mid-30s.
Yeah, sure. We did a thing on the Tennis Channel on our pregame show at the U.S. Open last year, where I put together some data that illustrated the very, very big correlation between the age of players and the length of their career, the average age of the top 100, and the prize money lift in the last 5 years. They've walked in lockstep. So the incentives for the players outside the top 10 to stay on tour for longer are far greater than they've ever been. Prize money is catapulting here in the last 5 years and will continue to go north. And that will encourage players to stick around because they can make really, really good money and be their own boss. And when players in my generation and generations before that got to 30, 31 years old, mostly everyone pulled the pin and you could go get another job teaching tennis or coaching a college and make roughly the same amount of money as you could if you were ranked 80 in the world. Now that's no longer the case. Now we're talking about significant money for those guys. So I think the incentives also, because they're making that kind of money, they can invest in themselves for physios and take better care of themselves and all that. So it all makes sense, and I think it's largely financially driven.